Let's observe, with God's help, what concerns identifying internal truth versus external illusion. A person who wants to succeed in life must train themselves to always reflect and identify the truth hidden behind things, and not be impressed by an outward appearance, which may seem very tempting but is completely different from the inner reality. The outward appearance is a kind of misleading packaging, deceptive from the truth. Let's also examine this matter from a social perspective. The person living within it, between friends, acquaintances, and even in relation to oneself, so that one doesn't deceive themselves with things they imagine, thinking that the truth is one way and that they are always right. The truth is not always as they think. From a marketing perspective as well, what is commonly accepted in the world of marketing may have different interests behind it. Let's reflect on the parable told by King Solomon here, and then we'll look at the moral. In the Talmud, it says, King Yanai said to his wife, "Do not be afraid of the Pharisees, nor those who are not Pharisees, but beware of the hypocrites who resemble the Pharisees. Their actions are like those of Zimri, but they seek the reward of Pinhas." From a social standpoint, a person can often find themselves in a situation that suits them, among those whom the sages defined as hypocrites during the time of King Yanai, who lived at the end of the Second Temple period. As is known, by the end of the Second Temple, Israel was divided and torn by many disputes. The temple was destroyed because of baseless hatred. In the book of Josephus, it is written that the father of Titus told him not to rush to conquer Jerusalem because there were internal conflicts between the groups in the city. He told him to let them destroy each other, and then it would be easier to conquer Jerusalem. This has been true throughout history. Whenever the people of Israel were united, no one could conquer them. Every time Israel suffered, it was after an internal division within them. Then there were the Pharisees, later called Orthodox Jews, who are strict in following the law, both the written and oral Torah. There were the Sadducees, the followers of the Sadducees, and the Essenes, different sects, all fighting each other. King Yanai said to his wife as a final advice before his death, "Do not fear the Pharisees, for you know them, and also do not fear those who are not Pharisees, because you know who they are and how to deal with them. But beware of the hypocrites, those who appear as Pharisees, as if they are strict in following the law, but in reality they act like Zimri and seek the reward of Pinhas." What does the word hypocrite mean? Even today, we use this term hypocrite when the external appearance does not reflect the truth. Just like there is processed meat today, which looks good on the outside. In the book Maftehot Lehaim, Keys to Life, in the chapter about health, we brought a study about processed meat. What exactly is this processed meat? It's unbelievable. What can be done to the meat to inflate it? They add proteins and water to it, and because it doesn't release all of it during cooking, they put it in a drum to make it capable of containing all the materials they add. Meat is expensive, so they prefer to add water, proteins, and other substances to inflate it. Then they need to add substances to make it stick together, and after all the processing, it loses its color. So they also add food coloring to make it appear red. You buy meat that looks very impressive, but the health damages within it are enormous. This is called being a hypocrite. You see red meat that looks impressive, but it's not its real color, it's food coloring. There's a person who is a hypocrite, showing himself as if he's loving, as if he's a friend, as if he's righteous, but inside he's someone entirely different. Here, King Solomon in the book of Proverbs says, "The words of the wicked are a mixture of blood, and the righteous will be saved from them." What does a mixture of blood mean? A person who sets a trap to bring about bloodshed, but outwardly he speaks to you nicely. The words of the wicked, a wicked person is also bad inside. In the word wicked, there's also the word bad. This is true both in relation to health and to heaven. This is called a person who has been condemned and this person, on the outside, speaks in a very impressive way. Let's open a business together. You invest money, I will help you, and you'll get rich. But in reality, what is his goal? To trap that innocent person and harm them. This is what King Solomon warns. Beware of such people. The words of the wicked are a mixture of blood. They set a trap for you. What's a trap? You don't see it. You don't see the evil in them. You only see the impressive outward appearance, which looks friendly. But the righteous will be saved from them. The Vilna Gaon writes that this verse has two meanings. When a person walks with righteousness, God helps him. His mouth, which speaks righteously, will also save him from those wicked people who want to deceive him. This is divine assistance, help from heaven. There's a story about one of the sages from Iraq who came to the land of Israel during the time when the Turks ruled. When they saw him, they were sure he didn't understand their language, so they arrested him, suspecting him of being a spy. They spoke among themselves, sure that he couldn't understand, but he was a learned scholar, a great rabbi, and even a Kabbalist. He understood everything they were saying. He walked a few meters away from them, near a window, and they scolded him, asking why he was walking away. He answered them in their own language, saying, I understand what you're saying, and I know you're talking about me. I understand that you don't want me to hear what you're saying, so I'm going away so I won't hear it. They said, such honesty, release him. When a person walks with righteousness, with his simplicity and innocence, in certain situations he will receive divine help. He walked with his truth, and this turned the situation in his favor. The Vilna Gaon also writes, the righteous will be saved from them. This means that when a person walks with righteousness, sometimes in order to protect himself, he needs to act cunningly in response. You are an honest person, but as written in Psalms, if the crooked one is stubborn, you should also be stubborn. Where do we see this in the Torah? Jacob, our father, was a man of integrity, living simply, walking in honesty. But when Laban tried to deceive him about his wages, he knew exactly how to make moves and tricks to turn the situation around. When Esau tried to take the blessings instead of him, remember that Esau sold his birthright to Jacob. The order should have been Abraham, Isaac, Esau, because Esau was the firstborn, and the people of Israel were supposed to come from Esau. When Isaac called Esau, he said, you are the firstborn. I now appoint you as my heir, and from you will come the people of Israel. For God had promised that they would inherit the land of Israel. It should have been Esau. Esau should have told his father, I am no longer the firstborn. I sold my birthright to Jacob, and now he is the firstborn. Bless him. But Esau hid this. Jacob knew that even if he came to his father and said, Father, I am no longer the firstborn, I sold my birthright to Jacob, Esau would deny it, saying, who would sell something so important? So when Esau sold it, it is written that he despised it. But now he realized his mistake and came with deceit. What did Jacob do? He disguised himself as Esau. His father could no longer see well because he was old, and he knew Esau was hairy. So he put goat skin on his hands and neck, and his mother Rebekah helped him. When Isaac couldn't see well and felt his hands, he knew that Esau was hairy, and he recognized that Jacob's skin was smooth. Yet Isaac blessed him. Jacob seemingly came deceitfully and took the blessings. But if the person is a deceiver, should you just let it go? If you want to recover your money, you can also act in an unconventional way to bring the truth to light. The Vilna Gaon writes that the verse, the righteous will be saved from them, has two meanings. First, when you walk with righteousness, you receive divine help. Second, when you see someone trying to deceive and take advantage of you, even if you are an honest person, don't let them trample over you. The Torah always teaches a person to be balanced in all areas of life. The beauty of Judaism in all aspects of life is the secret of balance, not to extremes. For example, let's take Moses as an example. When did God decide that Moses would be the leader of the people of Israel? Everyone knows the Midrash. Moses was shepherding the flock of Jethro and saw a kid running away from the herd. He chased after it, and the kid, feeling it was being chased, ran even faster until it reached a water spring and started drinking. Moses realized the kid was thirsty and felt sorry for it. He said to himself, "How could I have chased this little kid who is thirsty for water?" Moses felt bad and, with compassion, took the kid on his shoulder, comforted it, and spoke to it kindly. God then said, "You know how to have compassion for a little kid. You are worthy to be the leader of Israel." A great sensitivity. On the other hand, Moses, when he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew man, struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Where was his sensitivity then? Where was his gentleness? You have compassion for a little goat, but this person is cruel and about to kill one of the Jewish people. With your own hands, should you not kill him, then he will kill that man. We have a halacha that if a person is seen about to kill another person, it is permitted to kill the murderer before he kills, if one is able to do so by injuring one of his limbs, such as cutting off his hand, to prevent him from killing. But if there is no alternative, and it is necessary to kill the murderer in order to save others, it is permissible to kill him so that he doesn't kill others. You see, in the case of this same person, there seems to be contradictions, but there is no contradiction here, because he is a true person who follows the will of God. This is what the Vilna Gaon says. The Torah teaches a person that, on one hand, you should not let others destroy you, but on the other hand, you should be truly sensitive and honest. This is also what King Yanai warned his wife about. He said to her, "Be careful of the hypocrites, a person who appears outwardly to be with you, showing himself as one of the most righteous, who is very strict with the halakot, but inwardly he is a completely different person." Even nowadays, it is important to note that there are people who pretend to be rabbis, establishing cult-like groups, enslaving those who trust them, turning them into their slaves along with their families, and managing their lives in every aspect. And if someone tells them that something doesn't seem right, they immediately humiliate and disgrace them in front of everyone. You must be very cautious. When a person chooses a rabbi for himself, as the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says, "Make for yourself a rabbi," you must ensure that this rabbi has the support of the great sages of Israel. You also need to use your critical sense. If you notice that this rabbi speaks one way in his private life but behaves completely differently, only preaching to others while acting contrary to his own words and controlling people's lives, then you need to be very cautious. The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avot, "Do not look at the vessel, but at what is inside it." This means do not focus on the external appearance. The Mishnah continues, "There is an old vessel that is full of new wine, or a new vessel that holds old, fine wine. The wine of the past was of much higher quality than what we have today, and the fruits and vegetables of today are of a different standard, especially with the engineering that goes into them in our generation. Old wine that has been aged in barrels improves with time, as long as no preservatives are added and it doesn't spoil. There are wines that spoil, but if they are preserved correctly, they remain high quality. So in this parable, the sages say, do not look at the vessel. You see an old vessel. You might assume that it contains wine that has aged for 70 years, and then you see a new vessel, and you might think the wine inside is from last year. The sages say, through this parable, do not look at the vessel, but at what is inside it. A new vessel, filled with old wine, transferred from another barrel, contains fine wine. An old vessel, though impressive, might even be empty when opened. And also, Do not look at the vessel, as the saying goes. What's the meaning behind this Mishnah? When you see a person, do not look at his outer appearance and decide immediately if he is wise or not. Don't look at the vessel, but at what is inside. Speak with him, try to get to know him. There is a young man, and he is like a new vessel. You might think, what does this young guy know? But speak to him, and he might be an expert in the field you need help with. He invested time and effort in studying and is professional in this area, and he can assist you. You could speak to a young man who is studying diligently in yeshiva, knows halacha, knows ethics and conduct. He is young, but he has a wealth of knowledge. And then there's an old vessel, an older person who impresses you with his age. But when you speak with him, you realize that he is empty inside. He didn't invest in himself, doesn't have any knowledge, and lacks substance. You may also find someone who is both experienced and wise, someone you can turn to for advice and wisdom. The sages teach us that even if a person impresses you on the outside, you need to be cautious. There's a saying, don't look at the vessel. This is also a reminder not to be impressed by someone's age. You see an older person, and you might think that they are wise and knowledgeable. But, as they say, an old tree can grow without being watered. You don't need to be impressed by a beard. Anyone can pretend. You need to check who a person really is. King Solomon warns us, when making business deals or receiving advice and temptations from others, be careful, because there may be wrongdoers among them. And as he says, the words of the wicked are mixed with blood. They are waiting to trap you and take what is yours. This lesson also applies when young men and women are looking for a spouse. Don't be impressed by outward appearances. Sometimes you see a young man who looks very impressive, but his personality is something entirely different. Or a woman who looks great on the outside, but her personality is completely different. By the way, a person who keeps physical boundaries before marriage gains a lot. Without boundaries, when you see an impressive person, physical contact becomes a form of bribery, making it hard to see the truth. But when there are boundaries, the conversation is meaningful, the connection becomes deeper, and you get to know the person's true inner self. Don't look at the vessel also applies to relationships. The second thing a person needs to be cautious of is not being impressed by external appearances. And this also applies to himself, not just others. Sometimes a person becomes biased towards himself. Every person loves himself, and as the sages say, a person is close to himself. There is a personal attachment because it concerns you. When someone is not honest with themselves, they might become convinced that they are always right. This can lead to misunderstandings, conflicts, and even divorce. And when a man has complaints about his wife, he needs to check himself. Am I giving her what a wife needs from her husband? Maybe all her complaints, frustrations, and anger towards me come from the fact that she's not receiving what she needs from me. We've mentioned several times the words of the Rambam, who emphasizes that achieving peace in the home is not enough with just good intentions. For most people, especially young people before marriage, there's this feeling, if I have good intentions and I find a woman who also has good intentions, then we will surely have peace in the home. The Rambam says that this is a mistake. While good intentions are necessary for a relationship, they are not enough. You need to learn the emotional needs of the man and the emotional needs of the woman. When a man learns how a woman is built, even if she is the CEO of a company and appears tough outside, at home, she needs warmth from her husband. She needs a listening ear, a shoulder to lean on, a kind word, someone who will listen to her thoughts. She flourishes when she feels supported and helped. She needs to see that her husband is there for her, helping immediately when he sees she's struggling without waiting for her to ask. She feels secure when she knows her husband loves her and then she thrives. But if she doesn't receive this from her husband, even if he treats her well, but he treats her as if she were just a colleague at work and doesn't realize that a woman isn't a co-worker, she's a wife with different emotional needs, that's where the problem lies. The husband must provide what he promised in the marriage contract. The marriage contract specifies that the husband will support, provide for, and fulfill the woman's needs. On the other hand, a wife who feels that her husband is disappointed, sad, angry, or hurt all the time and doesn't understand what he wants should check herself. Am I giving him the respect that a man needs from his wife? A man also needs warmth and love from his wife, and a woman needs to receive respect and admiration from her husband. The difference is in the balance. A woman needs a higher dose of warmth, love, attention, and support. She flourishes when she gets these things, and the man needs a higher dose of respect and admiration, something that will uplift him, how successful he is, how wise he is, how talented he is. The key is to uplift him genuinely, not by flattering him about things that aren't true, but by always finding something good he does and acknowledging it. And we've mentioned several times that when a wife tells her husband, "You're smart, you're a genius. How did you manage to fix this? How did you solve this? How did you organize that?" And then says, "I know you got this from your mother." When he hears that his wife honors his mother, he feels love and a healthy connection with her. There are women who don't understand this and think there's competition between them and their mother-in-law, questioning who he loves more, me or his mom. Then they become upset when he shows affection to his mother. Sometimes a mother also feels uncomfortable when her husband shows affection to his wife, and this creates a kind of jealousy and conflict. Wise women know that a man has two hearts, one with the love of a child for his mother, and another with the love of a man for his wife. These are not in competition. He loves you as a mother and loves you as a woman. There's no point in having competitions, like sometimes we see families that get into conflicts and tensions just because of a kind of jealousy between the daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law, where each feels that the other is taking her place. But when there are wise women, the mother knows how to genuinely praise her daughter-in-law, both in front of her son and her daughter-in-law, and even behind her back. Even if she has criticism, she doesn't speak of it. In the end, this approach leads to peace. When she hears these things, who knows where the conflicts could arise? A wise woman knows how to say a kind word, even when she has criticisms. She keeps it to herself, telling herself, "My son is an adult now. If something bothers him about his wife, he will talk about it." She doesn't need to draw his attention to the fact that his wife doesn't cook, or doesn't wash his clothes, or doesn't iron his shirts. If it bothers him, he will bring it up. She doesn't need to get involved. When a couple gets married, especially from the side of the husband's parents, they must remember that this couple is now building their life and future together. It is a big mistake to interfere in their life. It's like a construction site. Once they are married, the parents should imagine there's a sign on the door that says, "Danger, construction in progress. Entry is prohibited." You can visit, say hello, but not interfere with how and why they do things. Criticizing them just distances them further. On the other hand, the daughter-in-law must also be wise and know how to compliment her mother-in-law, both in her presence and when she's not around. She can tell her husband, "I was so impressed by how your mother behaved with the grandchildren when we visited her last weekend. She has such a good, healthy educational approach. She's a wise and successful woman." When the husband hears this, it makes him happy. It's good for him to see a healthy relationship between his wife and his mother. He too must work on connecting his mother and his wife in a smart and thoughtful way. And if he sees that it's not happening naturally, he should create a good relationship. For example, if he visits his mother a couple of weeks or a month after the wedding, he might ask her, "Did you pray for me to find a good wife?" What will the mother generally respond? What kind of question is that? "Of course I prayed." He says, "Now I understand. It's because of your prayers that I got such a good wife." Then the mother must offer a few kind words. "Yes, indeed, you were blessed with a good wife." She won't say that her prayers weren't answered. She will praise her. The husband will store these words in his mind, and then he'll run home and tell his wife, "I just heard from my mom that she said behind your back that you're wonderful, successful, and good." Of course, he won't mention how he got this information. But when his wife hears such words, she should also say something nice about his mother. Indeed, she is a wonderful woman. She has a good eye. Whenever he picks up the phone next to his wife, he says, "Here, my wife is right here. And just now, she said about you that you are good, that you are wonderful, like Aaron the high priest, who loved peace and pursued peace." When we behave wisely, we succeed in creating love and harmony within the family, and God forbid, not conflict. In any case, every person should suspect themselves. Maybe when I hold my position firmly, maybe I am wrong. Maybe the other side is actually right. Maybe I have something to correct. They tell a story about one of the sages of Israel who once told his students that one time he went through a forest. It was common then to travel through the forests from city to city, from village to village. He saw a peasant building a hut for himself from logs he had chopped in the forest. He needed to attach one log to another, hammer in nails, and connect them, thus creating the hut. To his surprise, he says, when he tried to do it, he saw that the man took branches and logs, and he sawed off the branches so that only the log remained. Surprisingly, he says, instead of cutting the branches off completely, he left a bump on each branch. He thought, "I don't understand what he's doing, because when he places one log next to the other, there will be a gap and the wind will enter." He was sure that when he would connect them, he would cut off the bumps. But to his surprise, the man didn't cut the bumps. Instead, he drilled a hole in the opposite log and then inserted the bump into the hole. And then he created a much stronger and more stable wall. He says, "I learned from this a great moral lesson. When I want a connection, a good relationship with others, with my wife, with the environment, instead of trying to eliminate the bumps in the other person, I will change myself, I will adapt myself, and we will create a connection, and then we will see that we are more united and stronger than before." There is a tendency for a person to want to change their environment, that my wife should change, that the other person should change, that the child should change. There are things that a person needs to know how to tolerate, accept, and change himself. This way he benefits, he gains a better, happier life. Another thing that we need to think about is the whole marketing issue today. Don't just look at the packaging, but look inside. When there are foods that are not healthy, but are marketed with nice colors, creams, etc., they all contain cholesterol, fats, and harmful ingredients. How many diseases today come from this industry because people don't pay attention? They get tempted by the external packaging. This external impression can harm their health. Even with healthy things that are beneficial, companies don't always give all the details, and we don't pay attention because we're told it's healthy. Let's take the example of brushing teeth. Everyone understands that it's important to maintain oral hygiene, health, and appearance. But how many times have we heard that we need to warn both adults and children that after brushing, they should rinse their mouths thoroughly so no toothpaste is left in the mouth? This toothpaste, when swallowed, is harmful. Who knows how many illnesses are related to people unknowingly swallowing toothpaste? Children are given toothpaste with a strawberry flavor, and they brush their teeth without realizing the potential harm. If someone wants to know what toothpaste is, imagine a silver utensil that is tarnished. There are special toothpaste to bring them to shine, to remove all the black tarnish, and to give the silver a nice shine. But if someone takes toothpaste with cotton, applies it to the tarnished silver, scrubs it, and then cleans it, they'll find that all the black is gone, and the silver utensil will be as shiny as it was at first. This means that just like those chemical toothpastes that have the power to clean tools, we need to be cautious about putting it into the body. Some people have sensitive skin, and they don't understand why they have various skin diseases. When asked, "Do you bathe every day?" the answer is, yes, of course, with soap, certainly with all kinds of soaps, and when they have a skin disease, they use even more soap. These soaps are full of chemicals. It's fine to bathe every day, but experts say it's not right to scrub the entire body. People with sensitive skin need to be cautious and not scrub the whole body every day. There are areas of sweat, of course, but the shampoos and all the chemicals that exist today are marketed by companies with all kinds of benefits, but they won't tell you the precautions because they don't want you to be careful. They want you to spend a lot of money buying from them. This also fits with the saying, don't look at the container, but what's inside. You need to use your judgment to think about every product. What are its advantages? What are its disadvantages? And how can you use it in the best way so you benefit from it without harm? This is the parable from King Solomon in the book of Proverbs. What's the lesson? When he speaks about the words of the wicked, mixing blood, you see impressive exteriors, but inside there's something bad trying to deceive you. This is the book of Proverbs. What's the moral? King Solomon talks about the evil inclination, Yetzer Hara, and that's who he speaks about when he says, the words of the wicked, mixing blood. The evil inclination comes to a person with a very impressive exterior, with bells and colors, and says, listen to me, you'll enjoy, it will be good for you. It creates temptations by using the desires of our bodies to bring us down. After all, why did God create a body for a person? The real person is the soul. God could have created a soul, placed it straight in the highest paradise, and let it enjoy his presence and be surrounded by his Shahina, divine presence. This is the ultimate purpose of creation, to benefit human beings. So why are we placed in a body, in a world with desires, trials, difficulties, struggles, and wars? Why all of this? The purpose of God creating people was to benefit them, but in a way that they would create their own benefit. This would make them similar to God. A person can't be a creator of the world, a rich one wanting to benefit others, but the highest form of beneficence you can give to another person is to make them like you. If you give to someone from yourself, you've benefited them, but the highest form of benefit is when you make the other person like you. For human beings, this is very difficult. How can you make someone like you? God wants to make humans like him as much as possible. A person is created. They are not the creator. But just as the divine goodness is independent, he told people, I want you to not receive goodness unless you create it yourself. It is written, everything is in the hands of heaven except for the fear of heaven. Fear of heaven is the most important thing. Everything is in the hands of heaven. How much a person will have, how much money they will have, whether they will marry or not, it's all in the hands of heaven. Their appearance, except for the fear of heaven is the most important. So why didn't the Holy One, blessed be He, take this out of His hands and give it to us? He wants us to behave well, to be like robots in His hands, doing everything, and then we would behave beautifully, not desecrate the Sabbath, speak kindly, and always be good people. But if that were the case, then what would you receive as reward in the world to come? The Holy One, blessed be He, says to a person, I want you to produce the reward you will receive. He took the soul, which is the true person, and placed it inside a body, a material vessel. And he says, now you have a material body. Yes, a material body. It has desires. Let's see who will dominate whom. Will you control the spirit over the body, or will the body overpower, and the evil inclination use the desires that we have? The body wants to eat, and sometimes a person finds themselves in a situation with a great temptation to eat. They're not sure how kosher the food is, but it looks delicious, and their friends are eating. They're tempted to eat too, but if they control themselves, their reward is greater than someone else who eats kosher because they resisted the temptation. The Talmud says, according to the pain, so is the reward. The greater the sacrifice you make for the honor of God, the greater your reward. 2 people keep the Sabbath. One is born in the house of a rabbi in Jerusalem, and the other is born in a home where the parents don't keep the Sabbath. Today, both of them keep the Sabbath. When they come to the world to come, the reward of the rabbi's son will be like the reward of the son born in a non-Sabbath observing home. You can't compare them at all. Even though he will get a reward, it will be 1 billion times less than the reward of the rabbi's son, because the challenges he faced were not easy, and he overcame them and built himself. A person who was not accustomed to a certain mitzvah, someone who is not used to putting on tefillin, and begins to put on tefillin every morning, their reward is much greater than someone who has been putting on tefillin from a young age, because they were not accustomed to it. A person who is accustomed to speaking lashon hara, gossip, because they grew up in a home where that was the norm, they need to learn to control their speech, what to say, what not to say, to be cautious with lashon hara and gossip, and study the laws. It is hard for them, but their reward is great. Thanks to whom does a person receive the world to come? Thanks to the body, because the body is the training tool meant to build the soul. Just as a training machine strengthens muscles, the body with all its desires is in opposition to the soul, but the body with all its inclinations is meant to serve as a tool for the soul to grow. What does the evil inclination do? It comes to a person with temptation, says, listen to me, you'll enjoy, it'll be good for you. It doesn't reveal to them that it's exactly as written here. The words of the wicked, mixing blood. It wants to trap the person. The Talmud says in Tractate Baba Batra, page 17b, these same words also appear in the Zohar, both in the simple meaning and in Kabbalah. It speaks about the angel Samael, the minister of Esau, the angel who fought with Jacob, who was with him until dawn. The Talmud and the Zohar say that he is the evil inclination, and this is his role, to use the body to cause us to fall. He is the evil inclination, the Satan, and if he makes the person fall, he rises up and accuses them before God, saying, Master of the world, look at this person. Instead of listening to you, he listened to me, and he goes and accuses them. But you prepared him well. That's his role, to cause a person to fall and then accuse them. And he is the angel of death. The angel of death is not just the one who takes souls, but all suffering, troubles, and sicknesses. All the hardships that exist are also his domain. The sadness, depression, and anxiety, who is responsible for all of this? Only that angel. On the side of holiness, there is only abundance, blessing, joy, and goodness. There is no sadness, no depression, no sickness, and no troubles in holiness. Adam, before he sinned, was not meant to die at all. After eating from the tree of knowledge, death was decreed upon him. And everything is the responsibility of that angel who took on the form of the serpent, the accuser. When a person knows that the tempting desire they feel, that sudden urge to do something, they must realize that this is forbidden according to the Torah. It is fraud in business, stealing what doesn't belong to me, eating something that is not kosher, desecrating the Shabbat, insulting their parents' honor. I need to guard my speech, but it's not easy. I have temptation. When a person stands up to the test, they rise and become elevated. But how do they overcome it? King Solomon says, pay attention to the outer covering of this temptation. It is from someone who is lying in wait for your blood, who wants to bring you down, to harm you. He tells you, come enjoy for a few minutes, but his goal is for you to suffer later. So it is not worth it to give in for a few moments of pleasure, only to suffer afterward and pay the price for it and cleanse yourself. These are the teachings that King Solomon imparts to us in the book of Proverbs. When a person lifts themselves above the ground and doesn't look at life superficially, they don't accept everything just because it looks like this, then they are wise. There is a well-known saying, "A fool believes every word. A foolish person is easily tempted. A wise person is cautious, examines everything, and considers what is inside, not just what it looks like outside." Once they discover that both the inside and the outside are aligned, truthful, good, and healthy, they adopt this fully, and then they do it completely. When a person lives this way, they discover a wonderful quality of life, both socially, in their relationships with others, and personally, being truthful and sincere with themselves. From a marketing perspective, they are not swayed by all the noise around them. They always examine and check what is right for them, what is true. By doing so, they rise to live good, healthy, and happy lives. Let us end with a blessing that the lesson will be for the protection and success of the entire community here with us, all the viewers at home. And may God protect the people of Israel and the soldiers of Israel wherever they are, that they return to their homes healthy and whole. Amen and amen.